So, in this short video, we're just going to go and have a quick look at how you can use live model activities in lessons and how you can plan them using the ADAPT method. So, I'd encourage you during the video that if you have any questions or anything, drop them down in the chat function and I will endeavour to use the technology to answer them back, and I'll be dropping, or I'll try and drop various bits and bobs into the chat function that might help you use live modelling in lessons at some later point. So, live modelling by the teacher really involves students getting to know what your thinking process is. So you'll need to go and provide examples of completed work or models that serve as scaffolds for the students so they can see your actual thinking process. Modelling really is just the beginning of the process. It's important that students try and have some input into their own models or have some input into the models that you are making so that they can go and start putting this into practice themselves. Because as soon as they can start putting it into practice themselves, it will help structure their thinking and really help push them forward in what they're trying to achieve. So we'll have a quick look about what metacognition is and how it all plays a role within this particular strategy. Right, just remember that metacognition is where students are thinking about how they're looking at things and how they can improve upon what they're studying, right? So live modelling is just one strategy that can be employed with students to help them do this and to help them regulate their own thoughts about a particular concept. So within all metacognition strategies, there are three key phases that we need to be aware of. So planning, monitoring and evaluation. And it's always worth keeping that in the back of your mind as you're working through any of these strategies. So the key to using live modelling with students is to design activities that promote them working with things or working things out for themselves, then questioning on how they can improve what they have done and how they can go and work better in the future. So we're just going to have a look at how the ADAPT method can be used to plan a live modelling activity. Right, so this is just one example, but a range of other types of live modelling activities can be used. Unfortunately, I've only got 15 minutes to talk about it, but if anyone wants to go and ask anything else, then like I said before, drop it down in the chat box and I will endeavour to answer. So the first thing that you need to do before planning any activity is to think about the area that you want to improve, right? Or that you want your students to improve on. So one key thing that was a problem for me was students' abilities to answer these long answer questions. But you could think about any type of question that you want students to improve on. Right. My issue was the long answer questions where it would be worth 6 marks, but students would only come and get 1 or 2 marks out of those 6 because they couldn't structure their own thinking in a way to answer that question methodically and get all of those 6 points. So live modelling is one method that I've used for a lot of years now to help improve this. So we'll just go and have a look at how the live modelling aspect can be done in practice. So Here's a quick example of a model that I use with students in relation to that long answer question.
This is our model of the alveoli. You can go and set it up with lots of bits and make it nice and large. That really helps go and grab students' attention. You can go, and if you wanted to go and put it onto the board and just project a diagram, you can also do that. Or you could go and just have a diagram on the middle of the table and then just work around that. So some of the key things that you have to remember when you're doing these modelling activities is it doesn't really matter what it is, but having something pre-prepared and set out to start off with really helps. Make sure that you're quite specific about the information that you're putting on, and that if it's a large model like this, you can actually go and move things around if you so wish, which really helps. If you notice on this one, any biologists out there, I've not actually gone and put on all of the information yet, right? So, different ways to do it. You can either go and put on the information bit by bit as you're speaking through it. You can go and put on no information at all and get students to go and annotate it. You can go and put on half of the information and get students to evaluate the work that you've done and suggest on other improvements that they can make to your model. There's absolutely all sorts that you can do with it. Right, hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, drop me a comment into the chat and I will get back to you right then.
So, hopefully, that modelling activity, that, like I say, that is just an example, right? You could go and look at various other things. If you wanted to go and have an answer to a question written out, and you could have gone and worked through that with students and modelled your thinking out aloud to go and explain to them where those bits were coming from, that's also fine. There's loads of other things. One key bit after you've done your modelling activity is just to review the success or quality of your own work as you're working through it with students. So it's worth standing back from your example and reviewing it to check for understanding at each step. So make sure that you're doing lots of questioning. At some point I'll drop something in about some different types of metacognitive questions that you can ask students to really go and get them thinking and engaging in the work and thinking around the subject or the problem for themselves. You might want to get them to evaluate whether your model is correct, right? Complete, or whether it meets the criteria. So you, in your model, might not want to have every bit. You might just want to go and put titles on, and then if you're lucky enough to have desks where you can write on with board markers, you might want to go and give students board markers and allow them to go and annotate the model themselves, right? So they will evaluate it and add to it and improve the model themselves, thereby engaging with it a bit more. And one thing that you always have to consider is, did you make it explicit? Right? Ask them, have you done it well? Right? Does it look right? Is it correct? Right? And like I said, then you can go and discuss any improvements that you could possibly make to it, or better still, allow students to improve it themselves. So, in the real world, so in practice, did live modelling work the first time? If I'm quite honest, no, it didn't work the first time. It's something that you do need practice, and it's something that did need to be adapted, right? So the problem was that after the modelling activity, the first time I did it, I didn't really follow it up properly. So when you're adapting it, so sometimes significant changes are needed to make the idea work in practice. Some of these adaptations can be bigger, some of them can be smaller, right? but you need to go back and think critically about, right, what went well with it and what could be improved. Right, so some adaptations that I've used after the live modelling include, well, it includes all sorts. I always found the adaptations that I had to make all came after the live modelling activity to go and help reinforce students' understanding of it and to go and really embed it into their memories. So just remember that modelling is just the beginning of the process, right? It's important for students now to try and put ideas that have been modelled into practice themselves. So now students have that example work that you provided during your modelling activity. They can now go and try and work more independently, and it'll be this independent work that will really go and push them forward. There are all sorts of things that they can do, right? So students can go and annotate their own small models using your example. They can go and work in pairs or small groups to go and put together short presentations that they can give to each other using, right, either using your model or using their own small models that they've put together. Then, if they go and do that, or with all these things, they can go and swap work. You can go and put some success criteria onto the board about what needs to be included, and they can go and evaluate each other's works. So, is that the end of the story? Not really. Right, remember that it's not very often that you're good enough at something first time, so you too also have to evaluate the effectiveness of using this technique. Right, sometimes you'll need to go back and look at how you've delivered the task. Sometimes you'll need to go back and think about how you're going to go and improve it. It's not something that's going to work first time. If it does work first time, brilliant. But if it doesn't work first time, just remember it's something that's going to come with practice. So, remember when we started off, we looked at that long answer questions for students. So, the last real adaptation that I made was to slightly change that task. So I went right back to the start of the process, and instead of just giving students one long answer question with no real scaffolding, I looked at how we could go and adapt that task to make it more effective for students to use in the first place. So one thing that I've done now with a lot of these long answer questions is that I've given them some scaffolded questions on one side that will just go and help them recall that information that they've got from the modelling activity before answering that long answer question, that they can then go and evaluate with each other. Right, thank you ladies and gents. Hopefully that's been useful, and like I said, if you've got anything to ask, just drop it down into the chat function and I will endeavour to get back to you. Right, cheers.